Yeah.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Through a post on Truth Social, US President Donald Trump announces the deployment of border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota while attacking Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Federal officials are standing firm on their account of the Minneapolis shooting as video evidence appears to contradict key elements of their narrative. The case has intensified political scrutiny, public anger, and renewed debate over federal law enforcement accountability in the U.S. The Israeli military confirms that it has recovered the remains of Israeli police officer Ran Julie, the last hostage held in Gaza. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney likely to visit India in early March as Ottawa steps up efforts to diversify trade away from the United States. Focus remains on agreements on uranium, energy, critical minerals, AI, and quantum computing. The Kremlin said the U.S. trilateral talks in the United Arab Emirates between Russian and Ukrainian negotiators had been held in a constructive spirit, but that there was still significant work ahead to be done. Philippines authorities are searching for survivors after a passenger ferry sinks in southern waters, leaving at least 18 dead and many still missing. European Union Chief Ursula von der Leyen warns that Europe will not tolerate online abuses against women and children as the bloc opens a probe against AI chatbots Grok. A private jet carrying 8 crashed in flames as it was taking off from Mene Airport with 8 aboard, but their fate and identifiers were not known immediately. Protesters gather in Minneapolis to demand federal immigration agents leave after a 37-year-old man is fatally shot by Border Patrol, intensifying local outrage. Governor Tim Walz calls on President Trump to withdraw the agents as demonstrations and political tension grow over the incident. All right, viewers, let's start with some news now coming in from Israel, where the military has confirmed that it had recovered the remains of Israeli police officer Ran Julie, marking the return of the last hostage body held in Gaza. This development fulfills a key condition of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to end the Gaza war. Julie was on sick leave when the Hamas-led attack on Israeli border communities began on October 7. In 2023, escalating into a 2-year-long war. He rushed to the southern border to assist but was killed in battle. His body was taken hostage by Hamas from the area of Kibbutz Alumin, Israel's military reported. Now, with the return of all hostages, both living and deceased, Israel marks a significant step in the ongoing conflict. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also announced that the army has found and identified the body of the last remaining hostage in Gaza. Let's listen into his statement.
אני שמח לבשר לאזרחי ישראל, לעם ישראל, כפי שבישרתי עכשיו, משפחת גמילי, כוחותינו מצאו את רני. הוא כרגע בדרך הביתה. זה הישג בלתי רגיל של מדינת ישראל. הבטחנו, אני הבטחנו, להחזיר את כולם. החזרנו את כולם. עד האחרון שבו. רני, גיבור ישראל, נכנס ראשון, יצא האחרון, שב הביתה.
All right, joining me now is John Rossomando, President of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst from Washington, D.C. John, thanks very much for joining me. The stage is now, of course, clear for the second phase of the ceasefire in Gaza. Do you think it's a credit to Trump's diplomacy?
Well, I think it's absolutely thanks to President Trump's ability to bring the different factions together to get the ceasefire in the first place. But I think that going ahead is probably going to be a little bit more challenging because of Hamas's refusal to disarm.
All right. What do you think are, really needs to be done now as far as the disarmament of Hamas is concerned, and also the tunnels, the underground tunnels that they are using, their destruction is concerned?
Well, I think that the tunnels under Gaza City and throughout the territory need to be destroyed. I mean, the plans for them should be handed over to, to the Board of Peace, and then demolished by, U.S. or other, sappers. Because the reason we had the death toll was Israel was trying to destroy those tunnels, but it wasn't entirely successful.
Right. What are now your, opinion of the Board of Peace? Of course, Cambodia was the latest country to join. I believe 35 countries are on board as signatories. But what's noticeable is the absence of some of the mighty nations, China, Russia, India, and the other P5 members of the UN Security Council, of course, except US.
Well, I think that these are all countries that President Trump thinks should be on there. I think as far as China and Russia, they're allies of Hamas. But then President Trump put Qatar and Turkey on the Board of Peace, which has really angered the Israelis. So I just think that it remains to be seen if this Board of Peace will accomplish anything.
All right, John, do continue to stay on with me, and I thank you for your comments there. Moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you that Israel's Supreme Court has held a hearing for a petition filed by the Foreign Press Association, an organization representing international media outlets in Israel and the Palestinian territories, demanding independent access for journalists in Gaza. Let's in fact first listen into some statements coming out of that hearing.
We submitted this petition in September 2024, and ever since we've been fighting for journalists to be allowed into Gaza. So today was a very important day for us, and we trust the court to make a decision and to allow journalists to enter Gaza independently.
We were happy with today's hearing. The judges listened, they asked good questions, and we had a chance to state our case. And we are hopeful and we are optimistic that they are going to rule and do the right thing and allow journalists into Gaza to do our work.
So I think it was a decisive hearing for this litigation that has been dragging on. There had been 9 postponements and additional delays, and I think we may come to the end of this because obviously the decision of the IDF to forbid the international press in Gaza is not understandable by international standards of a free press, but also because of the evolution of the...
Request John to join us back in the discussion here. John, even if the journalists are given access to the region, can their security and safety really be assured? Because we've already heard reports of a large number of journalists being killed in the war zone.
Well, I mean, we want to talk about so-called journalists, the ones who have been killed by the Israelis, who are actually spies for hostile powers like Qatar or even members of Hamas. I think that one of the things that we've had in the past, I don't know what it would be now, has been that what the journalists have been allowed to cover in Gaza has been censored and controlled by Hamas, which Israel believes will result in more propaganda against it, and I think that we'll see what the court decides.
Right, John, thanks then very much for joining me in this conversation. And we now move ahead, viewers. Let's cover some news from Germany now coming in. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadefull is urging Europe and NATO to increase pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. He called for a two-track strategy, raising the costs for Moscow while stepping up political, financial and military support for Ukraine. Waitful accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of creating a humanitarian crisis by targeting civilian energy infrastructure during winter to break Ukrainian resistance. Let's listen in to what the German foreign minister has said.
Es ist gut und wichtig, dass Präsident Trump es sich zum Ziel gemacht hat, das Sterben in der Ukraine zu beenden. Das Treffen in Alaska hat verdeutlicht, für einen gerechten und dauerhaften Frieden muss Moskau sich endlich bewegen. Bis das nicht passiert, muss der Druck auf Russland erhöht werden, auch mit verstärkten Ukraine-Hilfen. Dass auch Japan die Ukraine bislang mit 12 Milliarden Dollar unterstützt hat und Sanktionen gegen Russland durchsetzt, dafür bin ich sehr dankbar.
All right, joining me now is Alison Martler, former AP Bureau Chief from Bucharest. She joins us in this conversation. Alison, thanks very much for joining me. What are your first comments?
Well, I mean, Germany, before this war began in 2022, was very heavily reliant on Russia for gas. But it has changed its alliance. We now have a new chancellor, or relatively new chancellor, Merz, and they've become one of Ukraine's strongest allies in Europe. And that's important because Germany is the lead economy in Europe. It's an engine of the European Union, and it's very important for strategic defense, being a member of NATO as well. And Germany wants to support, is behind the effort, or is leading one of the leaders of the effort to support, give military and security and humanitarian support to Ukraine. But also the German foreign minister is, let's say, irritated with Russia from these talks in the United Arab Emirates, because Russia will not budge, basically Vladimir Putin, on the territorial demands they're making of Ukraine.
Right. Do you think a conclusion can be arrived upon as far as territories are concerned, particularly Donbass, that Ukraine, of course, does not want to cede, and Russia wouldn't stop without having?
I would like to give you a different answer because, I'm a journalist, but, I'm a human being, and we'd like to see progress in these talks, and most normal people would like to see an end to the war. But I don't see, since the beginning of any peace talks, Russia has stuck to its maximalist demands, and it wants territory as not conquered or captured. And Ukraine, it will cede on other matters, or it will make some compromises, but it doesn't see why Russia should be given territory that it has not taken, that it has not seized during its military operations there. So, and I think the German foreign minister said this as well. I don't see any progress being made, and I don't see the two sides agreeing. And this seems to be the sticking point. They probably could agree on other points, but on the territory issue, they seem to have hit a brick wall.
Right, Alison. Well, let's watch out how those trilateral talks go, and if any conclusion can really be arrived upon. It's the first time that the three parties and Russia and Ukraine are sitting together. But moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you that Russian President Vladimir Putin has welcomed Malaysia's supreme ruler Sultan Ibrahim during a private visit to Russia. The two leaders met at the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, greeting each other with a handshake. President Putin then invited Sultan Ibrahim on a brief tour of the museum's 20-column hall, where director Mikhail Piotrowski highlighted key treasures. The Kremlin says the visit will be followed by a private meeting between the two leaders. The engagement reflects ongoing diplomatic contact between Russia and Malaysia during Sultan Ibrahim's stay in the country. And now moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has downplayed US President Donald Trump's latest threat to impose 100% tariffs on Canadian goods. That's in fact breaking news updates we are bringing you. Carney has suggested that the remarks should be seen in the context of the upcoming trade deal review, as the North American Free Trade Agreement is set for renegotiation this year. Trump's comments come after Canada moved forward with a potential trade deal with China. Carney acknowledged the importance of the trade negotiations, but emphasized that the president's statements were likely part of his strong negotiating strategy. Carney reassured reporters that these remarks should be misunderstood and should not be misunderstood as positioning for future talks rather than immediate action. And moving ahead to news from Europe, Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani is urging the European Union to designate Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps as a terrorist organization after Tehran's deadly crackdown on nationwide protests. Tajani says the civilian toll demands a strong response and plans to raise the proposal at an European Union foreign ministers meeting in Brussels this week. Rise groups estimate nearly 6,000 people may have been killed, while Iran's official figure is far lower. The European Union has already sanctioned Iranian officials and restricted exports linked to drone and missile production, but listing the IRGC would require unanimous approval. The push comes as regional tension rises. Meanwhile, the UAE says it will not allow its airspace or territory to be used for any military action against Iran, reaffirming its neutrality amid concerns of possible US action. Alison requested to join us back in this discussion. Firstly, what is really your estimate of the death toll from the crackdown on protesters in Iran? Because of course different rights groups are coming up with different figures, whether in Iran or in the US. But Iran's official toll, I believe, is around or more than 5,000. What is it that you are picking up from, while you're at Bucharest?
What I'm picking up is a wide range of estimates. I'm also picking up, it's very hard to say at the moment how many have been killed because of a lack of communication, lack of internet. I understand that Iran has run out of body bags. It's very unclear. There were apparently 2 days last week and there were a load of killings. I've seen estimates actually up to 30,000, which would be absolutely massive. So I think at the moment we don't really know the full scale of the killings that have happened, but I suspect they're going to be higher and higher. Most organizations, respectable organizations, international organizations, downplay the figures until they are certain that the higher figures can be verified. So I think we're going to be seeing many, many thousands. I don't know whether it will be 30,000. I don't know whether we will ever know, because a lot of these bodies were just buried and we won't know necessarily. But what is worrying is the vast discrepancy between what Iran says, what some human rights organizations say, and then what other organizations say, and also the difficulty in accessing the true figure. And I think probably the true figure will never be known. We will have estimates at the end when this episode is over, but not at the moment. But it's feared that it's much higher than what the sort of aid agencies or are saying at the moment.
Right, and the de-escalation, the calm that we are seeing right now, do you think it's really the calm before the storm as far as action on Iran is concerned by the US or allies?
It looked like, first of all, some days ago, well, maybe last week, it looked like, or the week before, it looked like Donald Trump was ready to strike. And then the next day he said the killing had stopped and there was nothing. So now we're in a sort of limbo where we don't know. So it is possible, I understand, Iranian diplomat in Geneva today said we could expect a US strike, and then added they had no intelligence, they had no official information there would be one. But we do know that Donald Trump does function on being unpredictable, and that is one of his assets, if you like, one of his weapons, his modus operandi. So, at this moment, what the information we have, it doesn't look like the US is poised to strike, but I don't think it can be ruled out either. It also depends what is happening inside Iran as well, whether the authorities continue to kill the civilians.
All right, Alison, thanks then for joining me in this discussion. And now, viewers, we move ahead to cover news on the snowstorms hitting the west. Now, a powerful snowstorm and extreme cold have disrupted daily life across much of Canada as well. Environment Canada has issued orange alerts in several regions, warning of rare and severe weather. Heavy snow and strong winds have reduced visibility, triggered dozens of traffic accidents and caused power outages. More than 10,000 homes have lost electricity in parts of Quebec, with outages also reported in Newfoundland. Travel has been heavily affected, especially at Toronto Pearson Airport, where most flights were cancelled or delayed. Local authorities in cities including Ottawa and Toronto have imposed winter parking bans as crews work to clear roads. Now moving ahead, WhatsApp has officially been classified as a very large online platform under the European Union's Digital Services Act, a designation that will subject the messaging services to heightened regulatory scrutiny. With more than 51 million monthly users in the European Union, WhatsApp now faces stricter obligations aimed at protecting its users, particularly vulnerable groups like younger audiences. As a VLOP, WhatsApp is required to take proactive measures to combat disinformation and prevent the manipulation of public opinion. Additionally, the platform must safeguard users' mental health. The European Commission will closely monitor WhatsApp's compliance with these rules, and failure to adhere to the DSA's requirements could result in fines of up to 6% of the platform's global annual turnover. WhatsApp has until mid-May to align with these new regulations. Other platforms classified as VLOPs, including Meta-owned Instagram and Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Snapchat. Viewers, that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all international news and updates.